Okay, let's get going today. As you've seen from the agenda, we have a sports-based theme, Tweeting for Champions. It's actually going to cover all social media aspects. We're really pleased to have joining us Meghan Ryan, who represents the Red Sox socially, Pat Donahue, who represents the Los Angeles Kings, and as a last-minute surprise for you, we also have Kenton Olson, who runs the social media for the Seattle Seahawks, joining us via Skype. So we have three championship teams that we're going to have a discussion with this afternoon. So come on up and join us.
Thank you for having us.
One of the things that I think many people in our audience would think is that in some respects you almost have dream jobs when it comes to social media. So I guess I'm curious, how did you get involved with social media and how did you end up with your respective organizations?
So I started with the Red Sox as an intern. Went right out of college, and after working in minor league baseball for a couple of years, and also for the Cape Cod Baseball League, which is a collegiate summer baseball league, and had interned in both of those places, and then interned with the Red Sox in the marketing department. And they didn't kick me out after the end of the internship, so I just sort of stayed on in a part-time role, and then stayed on in a full-time role. And then we created the current role that I'm in 2012, sort of out of necessity. I think a lot of new careers have evolved with social media, so it was a role that didn't exist, and I think it's still continuing to evolve each and every day.
Yeah, same thing. I started as an intern, a 25-year-old and unpaid intern, because I didn't think I was going to go into sports. I started doing analytics, which just wasn't my thing. Met the right people and just kind of hung around. Did what I needed to do when someone asked me, and in 3 years went from an intern to a director, just from people leaving and people just giving me the right opportunity. So it's just kind of a perfect storm of what happened.
And for those of you who can't see, he's actually wearing a Stanley Cup ring. Go ahead and show. Oh yeah, they both have it. So you get the bling in this job. It's great.
You told us how you got started. I assume, like any other job, there's highs and lows, pros and cons. What are the best parts about your job? What are the worst parts about the job?
For me, I've got to lift the Stanley Cup twice, which is a pretty weird childhood dream of mine to do. I've been lucky that with the Kings, I've only lost one playoff series. I've won 2 championships in 3 years, so there's been very little downside to my 3 years in sports.
I've had 2 losing seasons in the past 3 years, so we went from high to low. I think for me, the best part of my job, aside from getting to call Fenway Park my office and going to work there every day, is getting to interact with our fans and really being able to be, albeit behind the scenes, the face of such a historic franchise and the brand, and being able to communicate to Red Sox Nation around the country and around the world, and being able to interact with fans on a daily basis, both in person and online.
Meghan, you mentioned the brand. That's obviously important. You two are clearly very public faces of your brands. Can you describe what you might call a, quote, typical day in your jobs?
Yeah, I would say there's no typical day. I think we both work in pretty small departments. While we represent very large brands, we work in very small teams, which gives us the opportunity to wear many hats. And I think that's something that is, that I love about working in sports, is that you get access and ability to have an impact in so many different areas. Our department handles advertising and broadcasting and our fan clubs, social media, graphic design. So you get to handle a little bit of everything. In terms of a normal day, it really depends. During the season, it's quite different. We sort of go into game mode. And I always think it's hilarious. People always ask me, oh, do you get to go to games? When they hear you work for a sports team. And I wish I could sit in the bleachers and drink beers and eat hot dogs sometimes, but it's very different. We're sitting at our cubes and we're not necessarily enjoying the game. So we do work every single game. It's a little bit of a different perspective, but our role on those game days is to talk to all of you and to talk to our fans, because we have an experience that's happening in our ballpark or in our arenas each game day, but there's a whole different conversation and group of fans out there that we want to communicate with and share that experience. You know, we get 37,000 people to each game, but we can touch millions more via social media and through our broadcast partners as well. So, trying him again.
Yeah, my days are broken up into game days and non-game days. So if it's a game day, we usually skate at about 10 o'clock. But every day starts off with waking up and having my iPhone and answering emails and scheduling Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, everything that needs to go out on social media throughout the day, whether it's previews, sponsorship activation, broadcast. Much like Megan, we kind of handle everything that the public sees online. But yeah, it's just a lot of sitting on Twitter. It's a lot of pulling out my phone, even though I shouldn't all the time, and it never stops. We manage brands that are international. We have fans all over the world. We have people that wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning in their country and watch the game. So we need to provide highlights sometimes to. We have a very popular Slovenian player, so we target a lot of Facebook stuff to Slovenia, whether it's highlights of that player or articles about him and whatnot. And we handle most of the written content as well, so dealing with writers and kind of content calendars and all that kind of stuff. Every day is there's just a lot to do.
So we have brands in our audience, some that use social media for branding purposes, some that use it for selling products, what have you, some just more general for promotion. What's the goal for each of you guys with your social media efforts?
We're lucky enough right now that we don't need to sell tickets, which is the best thing that you could tell me, is that I don't have to sell tickets anymore. Because that's a hard message to, when you play 82 games a year, preseason and playoffs, it's 100 games a year. And I mean, I don't know how she does what she does, but it's hard to make that original and interesting. So I'm just lucky that I haven't had to do it. Yeah.
We do have to do it. I think in regards to what our objectives are, what we're looking to do, I think it's a little bit of everything. So for us, we're looking for social to drive revenue, absolutely. For us, that revenue is in the term of ticket sales, and it's really difficult with the proliferation of the secondary market. You might be more apt to find a cheaper seat on StubHub or get a better deal or last-minute tickets through the secondary market. So we're looking to drive ticket sales via social, and I'll admit it, it's a very small percentage of our ticket sales right now that are sold via social. I hope that number, and I know that number will increase. I'd like to, hang my hat on that I can prove to our VP of ticketing that I can sell tickets for him via social. And we've done a couple things that have been effective in terms of limited time offers or flash sales or exclusive social media pre-sales, where we've been able to demonstrate success there. But I think in terms of, branding, also serving as a customer service tool for our organization is really important. Pat mentioned fans that are up at 5 a.m. and we look at it in terms of a variety of functions, not siloing out any one of those specific ones.
Yeah, and I think our main goal is just to stay relevant. I mean, we play hockey in Los Angeles, which doesn't always make sense. When we have the Lakers, the Clippers, the Dodgers, the Angels, UCLA, USC football, it's a very crowded marketplace for a team that won absolutely nothing in 45 years. I mean, they had Wayne Gretzky and didn't win the Stanley Cup. Like, that's the history of the Kings is not a very prestigious organization. So in terms of radio and TV broadcast, a lot of our time and effort goes into just awareness that this team is playing, and now that we've kind of reached our level, is sort of differentiating ourselves from the other teams, especially we're taking, the Lakers aren't that good anymore, so we can really kind of own our building. We share our building with the Clippers and the Lakers, which is another kind of issue that we have in terms of making the building our own. So we've really kind of tried to push our players, tell our story, and kind of show that, these are some of the best athletes in the world, and trying, to get people to know who they are.
You mentioned the Kings. I think your word was you're not very prestigious. So the Red Sox have a long history. Does that, what you talked about, the lack of not having that kind of history, does that give you freedom to do Twitter the way you do it? Because for those who don't know, the LA Kings, he's hysterical on Twitter. You had a playoff series against the New Jersey Devils, and you'd totally trash talk the state of New Jersey, and you totally trash talk Canada after you beat the Vancouver. What was it, game 1 of the playoffs against Vancouver?
Specifically Vancouver.
Right. Does that give you freedom to be?
It did at the time. That was when in 2011 we entered the playoffs as the 8th seed, having never won, playing Vancouver, who was the number 1 seed. They had previously lost the year before, and they have a very, very passionate fan base. But we were the little rowdy 8th seed, and everyone loves an underdog. There's nothing better than an underdog in sports. And so I think that was part of our method was, we need to stand out from all these other teams. I don't even know how many championships the Lakers have won, but we needed to be different, and we had that opportunity, and it just was the perfect storm. And the first playoff series, we rolled over everyone. So we went to St. Louis and won 4-1. We went to New Jersey and won 4-1. It was so easy to have that really kind of cocky attitude that we had. 2 championships later, I think how our personality online has changed a lot. I tell people I tweet with a ring on, and it's very different. We still have a lot of fun, and our account is still different than 99% of other sports accounts. But it's more just about an appreciation for the game. I'm a fan of hockey. Our fans are fans. So I treat them as they want to be treated. I don't give them PC statements. I don't, we have a personality. And the other issue with hockey players is they do not have personality. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you've ever met a hockey player, but it's just, and if you ask them a question, it's, we got to play 200 feet. We got to play a team game. You'll ask, we have the best goalie in the world, Jonathan Quick, played for the USA. Hey, Jonathan, you had an unbelievable game tonight. Drew Doughty had the best game of tonight. He will never talk about himself. So it's really, really hard to get their personality out. So I think that's why I've kind of taken that online as we're the Kings, and we're this, fun, engaging team that people can kind of interact with online.
And Meghan, you mentioned too, to Matt's point of the long history. How do you, fans obviously just by definition are passionate. How do you deal with it when you go from having a championship team to all of a sudden not having a championship team, and yet the fans are expecting this and are probably reacting somewhat negatively? How do you handle that?
Yeah, absolutely. Welcome to my life last year. It was not so fun. One thing that we have always kind of looked upon is I think for the Red Sox, we have the brand of the Boston Red Sox, but then also we have the brand of Fenway Park. How many people in this room have ever been to Fenway? All right, a good number. Fenway is one of those bucket list places. Bob Costas on Sunday Night Football a couple weeks ago mentioned it, with Lambeau and with the Masters and the Kentucky Derby, and it's sort of one of those iconic places. So one thing that we really tried to do this past year, 2014, when we finished in last place, was look at how we could capitalize on the ballpark and how we could share stories and fans' memories of coming to Fenway Park. So we created a campaign called My Fenway. And we looked to activate a lot of user-generated content around My Fenway. What does that experience mean to you? Maybe it's bringing your kid to the ballpark for the first time and they're 5 years old and you sort of have that wide-eyed wonder, someone's coming in and seeing that place for the first time, or it's 3 generations that have, lived and breathed with the Red Sox through the good times and the bad times. So we've looked to capitalize on things that are a little bit more evergreen and really capitalize on the emotion and that connection to Fenway Park. We also actually just finished a commercial shoot this past week where we went out and asked fans on Twitter to participate in a commercial. And we wanted their real honest opinions, and we got them. And we're actually going to air the spot on our TV partner and also online, but we wanted to show that we were listening and we understand and we get it, and it's a real authentic piece. I think that'll be a lot of fun, but we wanted to give fans the opportunity to not really be tone deaf. We're fans too, and so in those bad times, we want to sort of acknowledge that we hear fans, and let's harness the power of their conversations and put them on air. So we'll see how it turns out.
Do you when you're on Twitter, do you monitor the @mentions of your teams, or the volume must be insane?
Yeah, I probably read 95% of them.
Really?
That's just a lot of what I do.
And reply to them.
Yeah, I replied to. We had someone look at like numbers wise, and it's around like 40%, the average NHL playoff team last year was 5%. We also had 6 times the growth of any other team. Granted, we won, but there are some teams that are much larger than us that we crush just because we talk to people. It blows my mind playing another team, and I go on their Twitter feed, and they've gone an entire 2.5 hours and didn't tweet to anyone. At that point, you're just ignoring people, because I know that someone's asking like what channel the game is on, or who scored that last goal, or can you get me a photo of this player, and they're just not responding. So at the end of the day, it happens to me, if I tweet at a brand and I give them 2 or 3 times and they don't respond, I'm out. Like I'm not interested in, I'm probably not going to tweet at you again. I take that to heart with us, where it's if someone tweets at us and it's a genuine tweet, like I'm going to respond to them most of the time, negative or positive.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think it's really important. Those fans, they're asking questions, and they want and deserve an answer. We'll also look to do things like give people happy birthday shout-outs, or show someone where they can get a first-timer's gift if it's their first time at the ballpark, or they lost their tickets. How the heck can they get them reprinted? Like, people are looking for solutions, or they also want some praise and recognition. Nobody loves, anything more than seeing their name in lights. I think, to get that feeling like the Red Sox or the Kings wished me happy birthday, it's a pretty cool feeling, and I think it's a missed opportunity to ignore that and not to respond and reach out to those fans, and also use it as an opportunity for service. I think we have really taken steps to get better at that, and got another person to our team this year to help out with that, that's in a community manager role. I think it's, for the community manager and the managers in the room, it's such an important role to be able to answer those questions, to filter them to the appropriate parties in our organizations that need responses, and make sure that we're getting answers to our fans in a timely manner.
Yeah, I mean at this point, it's modern customer service. Yeah. Like I ordered food on Grubhub. My food was late. I didn't want to call them because I don't like calling anyone. So I tweeted at the Grubhub account, sent them my order number, and then they updated me on it. And my flight today was delayed, so I wasn't going to call American Airlines. I tweeted at them. They never responded. But that's where customer service is. And like she was saying, all game, whether it's people at home watching on TV or in the game, they're coming to us to figure something out. Whether it's, I get questions of like, hey, where could I go get a Heineken instead of a Coors Light? So we get those kind of questions all the time, and that's kind of what we're there for.
I was also going to say, not that any one fan is more important than the other, but realistically some are. So we have done some efforts to reach out to our season ticket holders and use our season ticket holder account reps to make sure that those customers who are our most important customers, we want to make sure we're prioritizing response time to your most important people who are spending lots and lots of money with us. We want to make sure we try to respond to everybody, but if there's tools or groups of customers you can identify as your most important, those are the people we want to get back to right away.
So along those lines, I live in Washington State. I follow the Mariners on Twitter, and they have occasionally, I don't know if they did it last year, but in previous years, they have done like a special night for social media influencers, fans that may have blogs or what have you, comment regularly on Twitter. Do you guys do things like that? Are there benefits to that?
We don't have a ton of space at Fenway, so it's a 102-year-old ballpark. We don't have a lot of fancy party suites or room to do things like that. But we do a number of those efforts, and I think it sort of goes back to a philosophy of micro-marketing that we really take to heart. So we'll do things like each week we'll identify 5 influencers and send them a fan pack. You'd be shocked at how amazed people are when they receive a DM from the Red Sox to just simply thank them for being an active part of our online community, and we'll send them a fan pack. We'll also send a fan pack to 5 new followers every week. Thanks for being a new @Red Sox follower. We send them a fan pack and just give them a shout out and a token of our appreciation to know, hey, there's someone on the other side here, and you're not just a number. We want to thank you for that. We have done some events at the ballpark as well, but space is a little more limited for us. So we have done some things where we've done ticket pre-sales. So as a perk to following us, you could get access to tickets before they go on sale to the general public, and that's been really successful. And it's not so special because really you could share that password with anyone, but it's the allure and the idea of we're thanking you and we're giving you this special offer.
Yeah, being in Los Angeles, when you do pull our influencers list, it's all celebrities. Yeah. So we have done, we've tried to take advantage of that. Like we did last season, we did vignettes with our players and someone. So Tom and Colin Hanks and one of our players, and Jerry Bruckheimer and one of our players. And trying to kind of tie them in. Will Wheaton, King of the Nerds, has like 4 million Twitter followers. So we have him, he'll write for our website, he'll come to games and take over our Twitter account. We've invited some other people that are big in social. Retta from Parks and Recreation is a huge Twitter personality. So I invited her to a game, and kind of, she vined the whole game, and she's now become like one of our biggest fans online. So those are the kind of people that, if we can, get them to a game and kind of interact with them. These people have, we can look at social, influencers who have 10,000 followers, but we're dealing with Jerry Bruckheimer who has like 3 million. So it's just these huge scale people that we have to take advantage of them. Not take advantage of them, but involve them with us. And yeah, it's been a good payout. And they're true fans. That's the best. That's why it works. Jerry Bruckheimer is a season ticket holder. So it truly works when you have him talking about the team with a player.
You seem to be willing to take more risks than a lot of teams. For example, letting somebody take over, the Twitter account. You do other things on the website. For example, you post things from fans and so on. Is that unusual? I mean, Meghan, do you do that with the Red Sox? Is that something that people should be willing to take those kinds of risks in certain cases? And if so, how do you mitigate the risk? How do you make sure that it doesn't blow up on you?
I mean, especially in terms of posting stuff to the website, we control it by, I proofread. I'm the one that posts it. So we work with a lot of hockey bloggers and kind of non-traditional media to write for our website because it's free content. You can't have too much content. So these are people that I personally know that I either think are really funny, or we work with someone who is really good with our prospect pool. People who can have an insight that I or our beat writer can't provide. And yeah, and when we work with some of the the funnier people, the more people that are tuned into internet culture, we have a really funny disclaimer that we put at the top that the LA Kings haven't read this or approve of anything that's being said. But yeah, we just we have fun with it, and I think there's been very little that I've had to take out. But that's the way to kind of prevent it. The Twitter takeovers I haven't done as much just because it's just pretty risky. But if I'm sitting next to the person, I was telling them, if you're sitting next to the person and the person is generally a fan of your brand, we have the same goal. Like they just want to have fun and kind of have this cool event. So if it's all in good nature, yeah, it's been a rewarding experience.
I'm probably a little more paranoid. I do also have a much more historic and probably a little bit more conservative brand. So I think it works wonderfully for those guys, but I don't think it would necessarily go over so well in Boston with our team and our media market and some of the things around our brand tenants. But I do think there's a huge importance on user-generated content in different fashions. We have done some Instagram takeovers where we called it Sox Grammars, and we let fans take over our Instagram account. So they were taking all the photos but sending them to me. So I was publishing all of the content on our account, but giving them shout outs, giving them that recognition. So I think we've played around with it in a variety of different ways using user-generated content on the site. We created a couple commercial spots last year. We ended up using one for our holiday card where we asked fans to send us their video of the final out of the World Series from all around the world. And we got some really cool videos, and we put that together and ended up sending it out for our holiday e-card. So probably a more conservative approach, but I think there's been some fun ways where we've been able to give our fans the power and some of that recognition and give them publicity on our sites.
Yeah, I think the main thing that we kind of take away from it is these people are already writing about our brand, so why don't they just write on our website? We, I don't know, 6 or 7 years ago, hired our own beat writer. We're one of the first teams to have someone who works for the team but is completely unbiased, can say whatever he wants. He flies with the team, so he has exclusive access to certain things, certain players. He runs his own blog that sits on our network. But he accounts for 45% of our overall traffic because it's a real voice and it's a real person. So it's just getting away from the traditional long form media. It's much more blog inspired and kind of embracing that internet culture.
What's your, the online team's relationship with the rest of the organization? So I guess there's two parts. So the business side, right? Ownership and general manager and all that sort of stuff. But then also coaches and players and all that sort of stuff. Where do you fit in, and do you have access to players when you need it? How's that relationship play out?
So with the Kings, business is on that side of the room and hockey is on that side of the room. They're very, very separate. The coach doesn't know my name. The players don't know who I am. They'll probably recognize me. But I'm not the one running into the locker room saying, hey, Dustin Brown, can you vine something for me? We just let him play hockey. Even during games, we cover we have a pregame skate. We just cover the players, getting warmed up, getting dressed. It's almost every game occurrence that a coach will call the PR staff and complain about us. And I'm the most incognito. No one knows that I'm there. But somehow they just see one of us with a camera, and it's like, oh, I don't want them here. Because it's such a closed-knit hockey thing. It's very strange. So yeah, I think I kind of work as the media. I cover the team from a bubble. On the business side, we work with everyone. The ticket guys right here and the sponsorship guys right here. So it's a much more kind of cohesive team on the business end.
For us, on the business end, my department is within the marketing department, and we work very closely with ticket sales. We meet with them every week to discuss priorities, upcoming games, where we need to focus our efforts. We work a lot with our sponsorship group, community relations, internally working with a lot of those different departments. In terms of my function as social media, I always think it's interesting amongst teams sort of where social falls, if it's marketing or if it's communications, if it's PR, who sort of owns that. And it's a very different structure everywhere, but I have pretty great access to our players and our manager and our coaching staff. And that didn't come easy, and it was something that we built over time. But I think it was really important to build those relationships. I go down to spring training with the team for about 6 weeks every February to March, and that's the best time to build those relationships. So I would introduce myself. Our manager, John Farrell, is great and really wonderful to work with. I, for a season, did an Ask Farrell Twitter question for him every single day after his pregame media scrum. then he got sick of that. But I think it was a really wonderful sign that he was willing to even allow that. And it's, fostered some great content and willingness for them to recognize my presence. I think what I've tried to tell our players and have really good relationships with our team is that I'm not a media member, and we have, Boston is a pretty intense media market. So I've worked with our players to let them know that I'm not going to make you look like an idiot. I think they're always concerned that someone is going to make them look like an idiot. So I work with them to show them how social can help build their brands. I mean, they're all looking to have careers probably after baseball, and there's a lot of endorsement deals to be had out there. And the ones that get it really get it, and they see how they can use social to, be more lucrative for themselves in terms of sponsorship deals or building their brands in terms of community projects and things they're involved in. So have really good relationships with those guys and have been able to get some great access in February and March, which has led to, being in the clubhouse in October and shooting video in the batting tunnel before the American League Championship Series, and no one thinks anything of it because I've been there for 6 months.
Megan, we were talking about this in lunch. What kind of unique challenges do you face as a woman working in a largely male-oriented business?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm usually often in a lot of meetings where I'm the only woman in the room, and especially in the clubhouse. I think it's important for me to sort of establish, as a woman in that industry, what I'm there to do, and that we're looking to do, great things on behalf of the brand and really show them that this isn't a joke, we're not there to make anyone look bad or that this isn't taken seriously. It's really important to sort of show and build an important relationship that it took months to build, to be honest, and was not something that happened overnight. But I think for those guys to see that, the importance of what we're doing and how we can show good things that they're doing on and off the field was really important to earn that trust.
Are we still at the point with either one of you that you still have to convince anyone in the organization the value of what you're doing on social media?
Our GM would rather have me not exist. To be perfectly honest with you, we kind of figured this out a couple of days ago. Is if you look at our 4 most active players on social media over the last 3 years, and and I mean active as in like they might tweet once a week. Like our players don't use social media. Whether they're afraid of it, whether they're told not to use it, I don't know. But all 4 players are gone. Those are the 4 players that we've traded in 3 years. So I don't know if that has anything to do with it, but I think that might have something to do with the personality of our team. Up until about a year ago, we weren't allowed to put a single player on a billboard. It had to be 4 or more because it had to be for the team. We don't have any real, we have all-star players, but we don't have, if you're familiar with hockey, we don't have Sidney Crosby or Alex Ovechkin, and we could, we have players that could be the ones that are on backpacks, but our team is built as a team, and our players just do not care about it, and that comes all the way from the top all the way to the bottom. We had to just explain to our hockey ops what StubHub was a couple weeks ago because the secondary ticket market wasn't in their radar. So in terms of what I do, unless I could give them a dollar sign, I have once been told, someone in our organization said, what does it matter if we have another Twitter follower in Iraq? So that's kind of the mentality of what our hockey ops thinks about it. I do know that the players' wives and the hockey ops' wives love it because they all sit at the game and they all flip through and read our Twitter account. So hopefully that's we'll push them to do it, but that's kind of where we stand.
We'll have to all give you some tips on how to get through and make people show your existence matters, because it does matter. I think we have sort of crossed that plateau at the Red Sox, but as I mentioned, it didn't come easily. I think one of the things that was really important to show is that these conversations are happening about our team, and we have all of these beat writers out there talking about us. We should be speaking on behalf of our brand and as the official voice in inserting ourselves in those conversations. So we serve as an official news outlet for the team. Now, it might be a couple days later, so you probably hear a lot of rumors and things. Right now, it's free agency in baseball, and you'll hear rumors and things, and we can't comment on them until a couple days later. So we're not in the business of breaking news, but we're in the business of sort of reporting news and making it official, and then also showing that unique behind-the-scenes access and how we can provide more content for our fans. But I think one of the things that was sort of instrumental in getting people to understand the power of social and what it could do for the team is that the impressions that we're generating for you, the amount of money in ad spend you would have to spend to get those number of impressions is a lot of money. And we have very small budgets. So the earned media that we are creating on behalf of our teams, that was a really big selling point. You know, to realize you'd have to have $1 million ad budget to get the number of impressions that I'm generating for you from our social content. So I think that earned media and the power of seeing that was really helpful to prove the value of what we're doing.
How much of what you do is spontaneous versus planned? Do you have, schedules of things? Obviously, as the season goes on, things change, standings change, then you enter playoffs and so on. Can you talk a little bit about that?
I'm probably the most spontaneous out of anyone in our organization. We'll often, we're playing outdoors at Levi Stadium in February, and we had a meeting about it a couple weeks ago, and I just could have cared less because I have too many other things to do until that day, and who knows what's going to happen on that day. If we break it down all the way to the basic, page views for our website, that's a big number that we need to hit, right? Nothing I plan is going to make the needle move. It's going to be something that just happens and we cover it. Last season, our goalie's USA helmet leaked online, like the photo of it, and we were the first ones to have it. I didn't even take the photo. I just found it on Twitter somewhere. But I was the first person to retweet it, and that was like 150,000 page views for us, that moves the needle. So it's like, okay, I could plan this great content calendar, and everything's going to have 5, 6, 7,000 page views, or I could just wait for this one thing that's generally going to happen, and it's really going to click. So I have realized that's not like probably the right way to do it, but it's hard to get away from that stuff when in the Twitter age and the internet age everything is now, and it's tough to predict what we're going to be talking about in two weeks. One of our players has not been convicted, but he was arrested for domestic violence. That's 200,000 page views. If you want to spin it in a different way, could have never planned that to happen, but it's being ready to take advantage of those, not that situation, but the positive things, we're on it. If something happens with one of our players, whether it's good or bad, one of us is on it. It's going to be up on our website, and it's going to be, aside from trades and things that we can't report on, but we're the first ones to kind of have it, and I think that's the kind of stuff that I really spend a lot of time just hitting everything that I need to do. We have a PR content team that handles long-form written content. It's the only kind of content that they handle. So they kind of they plan the content calendar. But in my Twitter world, I wake up every morning and just kind of see where it goes from there.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of spontaneity that happens, and oftentimes you could force yourself into a situation where you have something scheduled that you totally forgot was scheduled, and a moment happens and it's not in your best interest. So a lot of it is on the fly. I think that works with smaller teams. In larger teams where there's multiple account managers or people that are handling account, you probably have to have a little bit more of that content planned out in advance to make sure that nothing slips through the cracks. For us, the pretty much only pieces of content that are pre-scheduled revolve around our sponsorship posts. So obligations that we might have with sponsors for sweepstakes or things like that have a set start and end date. And then every day we'll do a game preview with the pitching matchup and broadcast information. But again, you have to be really careful because you could schedule that and your pitcher gets hurt and goes on the DL and there's a change or there's been a late scratch. And if that content is scheduled in advance, and I'll admit it's happened, where a starting pitcher has changed and we had that pre-scheduled tweet for 12 p.m. Go out and then you have to issue a correction with the correct starting pitcher. So I think a lot of it is being ready to capitalize on moments. There's certain tentpole events in your season or holidays or important events where you can build a plan to activate around. And birthdays, things like that, where you can get your graphics all queued up and be ready to go. But especially in season, it's really on the fly and spontaneous, and that's the best stuff.
And I think in sports, we run by wins and losses. Like, you win 5 in a row and you have a new story. This certain player has just hit it hot, or I mean, even last night we played, one of our defensemen scored a goal, which doesn't ever happen, and he had this hilarious look on his face. So that became the story. Like, everyone asked him about that today. We went and asked some of the players about that today. We had tons of GIFs of him making the face, and like, that's what the story of the game was. So it's being ready and kind of seeing something that can be big and just kind of, making sure that you recognize, even if it's something small, like it was a 3-second GIF, I think it was retweeted like 4,000 times, just because this player had a really funny look on his face. So it was taking advantage of that moment.
So I want to ask about your relationship with Twitter. They have, different divisions. They have a media division where they have gone out to, CNN and Fox and other and they help them use Twitter in their daily job. They have a sports division as well. Do you communicate with them regularly? What kind of support or help or guidance or what? Is there a relationship there?
With us, I've met with people from Twitter many times, but I feel like they have a really high turnover. Whoever was handling our sports account I met with, never heard from her again. The ads people are probably the people I talk to the most, whether it's just getting in ad purchase orders for promoted things or I got sent an introduction from some guy named Chris that I'd never met, and he hooked us up with Twitter video, which we didn't have. One of the things, and not to toot our own horn, they use us as an example a lot. So they think that the Kings are great, they don't need our help. But in San Jose, I know that they meet with Twitter more often. So I think that might have something to do with it.
Yeah, we've met with those guys a few times. Being in Boston's not as easy as LA or New York. They have helped us out a lot with imposter accounts. So believe it or not, you probably can believe people have way too much time on their hands and create a lot of fake accounts for our players. There's a lot out there. So they'll help to shut those imposter accounts down, and that's really been a great help because one of our players will be like, help me shut this account down. This is not me. This person is saying these awful things, and they're using my picture, and they're saying they're me. And we've had a lot of those issues, and they've been really good with shutting down imposter accounts. Definitely, bounced ideas back and forth, and just a good resource to have. Sure.
I feel like Facebook is definitely making more of a push. Yeah. I hear from them once a week, whether it's about in-arena, advertising, video. I think they're realizing that they're in live event space, they're losing ground to Twitter. And so I've heard a lot from them and kind of new things that they may or may not be coming out with.
You both talked a lot about your sort of day-to-day jobs, and it's fascinating to hear the various things you do. You both also experienced, world championships, and that's got to affect you on a personal level. I mean, obviously the excitement of it and so on. Does it change your workflow when you're in championship? Does it get more crazy? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think when we won in 2012, it was very, everything came very, very easy. We beat every team. There was no drama. We had no injuries. We didn't even have a close game, to be honest. And I think for our jobs and our personal lives, everything just kind of ran through. This last year, we had 3 Game 7s, which means a lot of flights to San Jose and Chicago back and forth. And the most nerve-wracking games I've ever watched as a sports fan. My beat writer and I, we travel in the playoffs, and I remember each Game 7, just the two of us sitting there, and we were both just like, I was shaking, and I did not know what to say. I couldn't make a joke. I couldn't be like, I couldn't say anything because it was just riveting drama. So I just let it play out, and we recapped it and had highlights, but I knew everyone was watching it at home. And I tried to get that across, and that I as the brand, I as the LA Kings was just as excited as people were. It was I don't remember, but it was a Game 7, and in sports there's nothing better than a Game 7. It's the greatest thing in the world. Channing Tatum was at one of our games for the first time. So I made a joke as the Kings saying, we were going into overtime, and I tweeted something about like, oh my God, I gotta go find Channing Tatum so he can hold us during the overtime. And that was like a huge, just showing that like we are equally as nervous and, anxious and sweaty and just, ready to just jump up and down if we win and, be crushed if we lose. I tried, I think people know that the Kings account, especially this last playoff season, like I was telling them, like I have all this gray hair just because of those. Like it's nerve-wracking and it's really hard to get that across, but I think we did a pretty good job.
Yeah, I would totally agree. I feel like there's a lot more exclamation points and all caps tweets, which I normally am not a fan of, but sometimes those moments definitely call for that. I think one thing that I always tried to keep in mind during that run, my mantra was sort of to be where others cannot be. In the World Series, it's mayhem. Game 6, we're at home. Everybody races to the field and, wants to see that, but everybody's watching that on Fox. You're seeing that view and that angle play out. So a few of my favorite moments from the postseason run in 13 were standing in the batting tunnel with David Ortiz, and we would stand there, and he had his goggles ready, and he's like watching the final 2 outs on the TV next to our batting cage, and I'm like, this is golden. No one else is here. So trying to think about those moments where the TV cameras aren't going to be, and providing a little bit of a unique and different view. I think we may all think about kind of content limits, if you will, sort of what's the bandwidth in terms of number of pieces of content each day, and I kind of threw that all out the window in the postseason. It was sort of, there's no such thing as too much content. Our fans are craving it, they're responding to it, they're reacting to it, they're creating that much content. We want to make sure we are sharing all of that with fans as well. So lots of caffeine, definitely gets you through a crazy month. One of my most favorite stories, I don't know if you guys know Jake Peavy, but he pitched for us in 2013 and then was traded to the Giants this year. But the night before the World Series parade, he asked me if I could help him buy the duck boat that he was going to ride on in the parade the next day. So I don't know if anybody knows, but in Boston we have these duck tours, and that's kind of the symbol of the parade. You ride a duck boat. So I helped Jake Peavy buy a duck boat and then organized a flatbed truck for him to ship it to Alabama that postseason. So it's like all these crazy things come up. That's the talk about a normal day. That is not a normal day, but I think just sort of have fun with it and run with it and embrace the moment as fans. That's what your fans are sort of feeling and the highs and lows of it.
I want to ask you to take your Red Sox and Kings caps off and just answer a question or two as Joe and Jane consumer. Yeah. What brands do you follow on Twitter? Do you follow brands at all? What makes a good brand on Twitter?
Yeah, absolutely. I do probably follow a lot of sports teams just because that's my interest. But one brand that comes to mind that I think does a really great job is Starbucks. I don't know if you guys have seen I believe it's called Let's Get Together, a campaign that they just put out recently where they shot a commercial in 28 countries around the world. And I think they've mastered that campaign extensions across social, especially on Instagram. I think they do a really great job. For me, what I love about that is it's about the stories and the people, and not so much about the product of a Starbucks coffee, but it's, the stories and memories behind it, which I think is a really nice way to get that Starbucks brand message out there without being overt and in your face and selling. They're great. And then I also really love JetBlue in terms of their customer service. They sort of serve as a model for responding to fans and angry customers. And in a business where probably the majority of their tweets are hate and anger and people missing flights, I think they sort of handle it with humility and respect for customers in a difficult situation. So I think brands that sort of for service reasons or finding a great way to tell that story around the product, those are some of the things that resonate with me.
I checked, and I don't follow any brands. I just don't want it in my timeline. I will go searching for a brand. If I need help from someone, that's the first place I'll go look. I think there's obviously ones that do great work, like she said, Starbucks. Like, everyone loves the Taco Bell Twitter account. The Oreo Vine account is great, but I don't need Oreos in my feed all the time. Like, it's tough for me to want that when I only have so much space. I only have so many thumb flips that I can go through, and I want what I want, whether it's hockey news or movie news or whatever I'm kind of interested in. So I think it's tough. I've been looking up, like, people love the Sherman account, but like, why would I ever want toilet paper? I don't know. I guess I don't have an answer for why. They do great work, but those kind of bigger brands, I don't know. I mean, if anyone follows Coca-Cola, like, I don't know why. I don't get it. I know that's not the right thing to say to people that manage brand accounts, but maybe give me a reason to instead of just searching out for it.
Do you follow your teams, like the teams you love? Would you follow the Red Sox if you were a Red Sox fan, or would you follow the Kings if you were a Kings fan?
Yes, absolutely. I'd follow the Kings, and I used.
Just the Kings.
Oh, if I was a Red Sox fan, I would absolutely follow the Red Sox. If I was a fan of the team,
Yeah.
I wouldn't. I used to follow a lot of accounts. I stopped just because they're just so boring, most of them. Like, if I'm a general fan of the LA Kings, I'm not super interested if there's a penalty in the second period. So I've kind of taken that stuff out of what the Kings do. I more try to provide commentary rather than there's just those generic, like, box scores. Like, there's certain teams in California and their Twitter account is just box scores. Even as a fan, I'd just be like, I don't need this. So there are a lot that I have unfollowed. But yeah, if I'm a diehard fan of someone, yeah, absolutely.
Well, you've given us a lot of tremendous information. I was wondering if we could close this in kind of putting you on the spot here. If there's one key takeaway that you can share with our audience about your job, about something they should consider, something they should think about, something they should try, any one thing would be great.
Yeah, I think with the Kings and where we've had the most success is just showing a personality. And, there's all sorts of stories about we hit it at the right time, playing the right team and whatnot. But if you look at in all across sports, whether it's us or the Columbus Blue Jackets or the Atlanta Hawks or, some of these teams that have fun, I mean, that's really where I'm at, especially in the sports world. Like, I don't know why sports PR and social media got so serious. I mean, obviously the players, the stuff that they say to each other is, stuff you'd never tweet, but like, they're having fun. Like, this is a game. And so we take that to heart and do have a lot of fun. And whether it's us or with another team, I mean, the Columbus Blue Jackets, most of you, if you don't follow hockey, you don't even know the Columbus Blue Jackets have a team. We'll put that out there. But they've gone from the 25th in the NHL to, I think, the 16th or 15th team. And they're terrible. They're last place in the league. They're 15th in Twitter followers just because they have fun. And they tweet their fans, and they have a sense of humor about things, and kind of, it's Twitter. And I feel like if someone's taking Twitter too seriously, then there's an issue there.
I would say for me, the sort of single most important thing that to take away is the focus on the fans or on your consumers. And I think approaching everything that you do with them in mind, I think this service angle is so important, and we're sort of crossing into a new frontier where we're connecting the dots and getting a social integrated into our CRM solution where we're providing better data. But I think that is so crucial to be able to better track and identify and harness the power of your fans, and it has to come back to data and how you're tracking them, and knowing that at Meghan Ryan is Meghan Ryan, and she's communicated with us via email, and she's bought 42 tickets, and how can we better serve her, I think is sort of the most important thing that we do. And whether you are the frontline community manager or the data analyst that's looking at that, we want to connect the dots, and I think we're scratching the surface of that. But I think that's sort of the most important thing to me, is that uber focus on servicing our fans or your consumers.
Pat, Megan, Kenton, thank you very much.
Thank
you
you.
for having me.